Good morning, friends. So I have been up since before 5:30 this morning. And that is a side effect of being on steroids, because when I was doing yard work on Friday, I made contact with something in the yard that ignited my immune system, which is not something that I have dealt with in several years since I started all of my practices. But there's this funny thing that happens when you let the universe know that you are ready to do some deep inner work, like entering training to help people with their inner work. And so, yeah, it's interesting how that works. And it's interesting, some conversations I've had recently with people where they've asked how I've been doing, and I have told them, it's just a lot. It's a lot of good stuff, and it's a lot of things being upside down, and it's just a lot of everything, a lot of stimulation, and as a result, feeling like just really sort of it's almost like vulnerability, but yeah, just needing to be mindful and extra cautious and stewarding of my energy and my self-care, because my pattern when I am in an inner work or a growth cycle, I like to think of it as a growth cycle, right? Because it's just uncomfortable. Like, I'm just constantly uncomfortable. I am out of my comfort zone. I would say that is the bigger thing than vulnerable, right? Like, I'm out of my comfort zone and it feels kind of exposed. And the universe has been strongly nudging me to be more visible. So first with the tour on the pantry that sort of blew up, and then I had submitted some writing to Love What Matters like over a year ago, like ages ago, when I was writing really regularly, and I haven't been for a while. And what's interesting is in the process of building this website, the person who I am co-creating with had asked me to make up some stuff on WordSwag, and I was like, oh, I've done this before. And I actually had dug out a bunch of my old writing, and I was like, oh, like, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I could use this stuff. And then the next day, I got an email from Love What Matters that they were going to feature some of my writing, and they shared it on their social media platform, and it has totally blown up. It's had over 100,000 reactions. There's like for 4,500 comments. It's been shared, I think, more than 8,000 times, and it's just like the comments, and I didn't read all of them, but just like the longing, the palpable longing for community and for people to be kind to each other, which is the theme of a lot of my writing, is just about the importance of kindness and love, and how powerful those forces are, even though they're not highly prized in our culture, and how, right, like, we should not wait to be perfect to show up. But those are the themes that come up over and over in my writing. And so that and the, like, looking for the magic that happens in the dark spots, and looking for the magic in the mundane, and just calling attention to all of the miraculous stuff that happens, and sharing vulnerably, right? Like, let's all connect in our humanity, right? Let's all be authentic and just show up as we are, because that is what the world needs more of. And so there was that. And then simultaneously, right, because those are good things, but they're also like, holy cow, I feel like I'm being swept up in this thing that's bigger than me, and feeling very like shoved by the universe to be visible, because this is what you're called to do, right? You're supposed to share truth, and not on a small scale. Like, you're being called to bigger reach, right? Like, if the desire is is to help as many people as possible connect with their truth. Well, right, get back to writing, friend, and get out there and share. And so that is what I am trying to do. And then also respect that my kids are sick. My son missed a day of school this week because his asthma had kicked up because he caught something viral, and then his breathing gets out of whack. And so we had spent a day sort of snuggling, which is beautiful in its own right, like, because he's not going to want to cuddle me forever. So just soaking up those cuddles. But there's also an energy drain when your kid is sick, right? Because they're sucking off of your life force when they don't have enough for themselves. And then there's also the fact that my husband's been sick and not 100%, and that affects his mood, and that's like draining him as a person. And so sometimes I forget what week we're on in terms of his medications and which version I'm going to get of him, whether it's like the tired rundown version or the more himself version. And because my husband has a lot of earth, he's not necessarily great at communicating how crummy he feels. And so then it's me not trying to manage him because that's the fire in me, feeling like I need to manage everybody else, and just let him be, and maybe remind him that it's okay to rest, and it's okay if he needs breaks. And if he needs time alone, or to ask me to take the kids out so he could take a nap or just have some quiet time. But then that's also tricky because he wants that connection. And so, right, life with littles, it's full of its own challenges. And then the being covered in a rash all over. So normally I have a lot of grounding practices I do, and what's kind of happened is my sleep has gotten really mucked up, and that is something the universe likes to do to me that is what the universe and I co-create when I'm doing inner work, right? That's a huge vulnerability for me with all the air in my constitution. So the sleep had been kind of a dumpster fire, and that is like one of my like pain bodies that I could get into, is the scarcity around time, because the sleep, right? Like the trigger for me about sleep is if I don't get sleep, I'm not going to get that time to myself in the morning, and I'm not going to get time alone to connect with myself before I have to do the million things, right? And then I'm going to have no time for rest. So like that scarcity around time and having time to myself and time for rest, because the thing that someone who has a lot of air values most is freedom. And when you don't get any sleep and it's really hard to function, everything feels like a chore and nothing feels like freedom. So that tends to kick up, and it's just like digging deep and trusting that the universe will work it out. And I've been working on that, and a lot of things have been getting canceled from my calendar. And so I'm like, I see you, universe. And I trust you. And sometimes I just forget. So there's been that. I also am a huge fan of oiling, which is an Ayurvedic practice. It's a self-massage, self-love practice. And in Ayurveda, they use what we would use for cooking oils for moisturizing and massage. So using, like coconut oil or olive oil or sunflower oil, things that you would eat. They don't recommend putting things on your body that are not safe for consumption. And so I started an oiling practice over a year ago, and I find it really grounding, and I do it at night before I go to bed, and it really helps with my dry skin. And it's like, full disclosure, not the most luxurious experience when you first start it, because it's like not a smell you're used to on your body, and it can feel really greasy when you first start. And now if I don't do it, I have trouble sleeping. Like it's part of my bedtime ritual. It's part of my self-care, and it really does help me feel grounding, and especially in the winter, because like you warm the oil in your hands and then you rub it on your body, and it's that, right? It's that nourishing touch, and it's releasing those happy chemicals in your brain because your body is is being touched. And so being covered in a rash all over, guess what grounding practice I haven't been able to do? And it's trying to do it like on my legs and any spots that don't have rash, but like my arms are off, like my chest and back. So it's been that. It's been like the inflammation in my sinuses, so I haven't been able to do the yoga practices. Like if you can't breathe, then it's hard to do the breath work. And right, so essentially I have been in a lot of ways cut off from my practices, like doing them the way I'm used to doing them. And even the meditation, when you are not getting sleep, it is really hard to focus and connect. It's like having a clogged antenna. And like my point in sharing all of this is like I am somebody who has been like devoted to these practices and to self-care and beyond that, like has studied the biomechanics, right? Like the physiology of things, has studied crisis management, nutrition, like mental health, like studied all of these things. And it's right, I have more awareness about it, but it doesn't change the fact that I am human and I have a human experience, and like my body, right, living in this human body is going to make me vulnerable. And as much as I would love to walk around in bliss all of the time, like that's just not the reality of what we've signed up for on this trip around the sun. And so, right, it's constantly having to accept, right? I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not doing my practices wrong. I'm not bad at this. I've not been forsaken by the universe. It's just hard because this is what exhaustion feels like. This is what being sick feels like. This is what life with small children feels like. This is what growth feels like. This is what hard seasons of our life feel like. And none of it lasts forever, right? And it's being in that place of accepting, like, oh yeah, this is hard. And also I trust it's going to be okay. And I trust that the universe has got me. And when we could get to that place, right, that's the, oh, wow, a lot of this feels like a dumpster fire. And also, like, my writing that I submitted over a year and a half ago is now blowing up on the internet. Like, thank you, universe, for letting me know that we're still co-creating, right? And we're co-creating all of this because I asked for this. I asked to do my inner work. I asked to kick up, right, like every little nook and cranny of stuff that I've stored that's holding me back from doing that thing and putting myself out there in that way of being afraid of judgment, of being afraid of being seen. Right? Like I asked for this. And in a lot of ways, right, that feels empowering, because if I brought this dumpster fire upon myself, then I also have the ability to navigate through it, and I have the ability to release it. And I also have been on this path long enough to know that on the other side of all of this hard is exponential growth, right? The harder the patch, the bigger the growth. So I guess if you are in a hard patch, I would just like you to know that it's okay that it's hard. And it doesn't mean you're failing. And it doesn't mean that you're not worthy. And it doesn't mean that you're not lovable or divine perfection. It just means that you're going through some hard stuff. And you have vulnerabilities right now. And maybe the cue that you're getting from the universe is to slow down and rest, right? Like whenever I'm getting caught up in the need to be doing, what I actually need to be doing is being and resting. And so, yeah, just letting you know that I am here, that you are loved, that it's not ever going to be easy and smooth sailing forever, right? Like the up and down, the ebb and flow, like look at the rhythms of nature. Nothing is sunny always. Nothing is blooming always. The tides rise and fall, right? Like we are are animals, and right, like we are part of this nature and we are beholden to the same rhythms as everything else. So I love you most. It sounds like my children may have escaped the house and that they are outside, so I'm going to go retrieve them. I'm sure the universe has got it and everything is fine. But my fire is like, we need to get on that. So I will talk to you very soon, hopefully tomorrow. But that's never guaranteed. Yesterday I was here, and then a small person fell off the bunk beds, and that was the end of that. So sending you love.